listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Hello, everyone. I'm certainly glad you chose to join us this evening. I am being very closely monitored and supervised.
Yes, he is. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Okay. If you haven't been to Give God 90 lately, you might want to check that out. The time for ordering books is about as close as you're going to get it according to the Postal Service. And hopefully you were able to give some to whoever you choose. Does that make sense? Yeah, I guess it did, sort of. I should probably tell everybody, if you're new, we kind of have fun here too. It's just, I want you to learn and be informed, but at the same time, I want you to have as much fun listening as sometimes we have saying some of the things we say. Oh, goodness. If you like what you hear, don't forget, the like and share and subscribe things all work. And it just kind of helps build us up. And a lot of you have been doing that because our statistics continue to climb. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone.
As I've often said, and I don't know how often I have said this, but quite often, the Bible in its original language and context is agonizingly specific. And I'm going to stand by that statement because it is sometimes agonizingly specific. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work to figure out what the original writers intended. Now, the trouble most people have in understanding the Bible is because most people, and I'm going to include a lot of Jewish people today who specifically speak and read modern Hebrew, are not reading the Bible in its original context, even though they might be reading it in its original language. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? It's kind of like attempting to read an old history book in the original language it was written in, and then understanding it the way it was written, and then attempting to explain it in modern language. It sometimes is difficult. I'm not a Hebrew expert by any stretch of the imagination, but we have a saying in the United States, and especially in the South: even a blind hog finds an acorn every once in a while, right? And as I was looking into an answer for a question that I was asked, I found myself looking at the word world. Seems easy enough until you start digging. Now, if you're keeping score, the Strong's number is the Hebrew 8398. We see that the Hebrew word for world is tabel, or tabal, I believe is the better pronunciation. And the problem is that Strong's doesn't give us a lot of help here. It defines the word as inhabited world, or just world. Okay, so that's not a great deal of help. I dug a little deeper, and I found that the first time the word is used, and this surprised me, the first time the word world shows up in the Bible isn't until 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8. We'll get into a little bit more of that in a minute. And that seemed kind of odd. You would think that such a common word would have been used much earlier, but it's not. And I kept digging, went to the Jewish Encyclopedia, and I wanted to see what was written. And guess what I found? Nothing. Well, there's a reference to the Jewish World newspaper. I believe it started in 1897. So there was no help there either. So I started asking some questions. Why is the word world not used until Samuel? And how did the original writers, how did Samuel think of world? And what I found is kind of amazing, or it was to me. I looked at the word earth, which, kind of seemed like a good place to start, right? Aren't they the same thing? Not in original Hebrew, they're not. The word earth, of course, is found in the very first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. Now, Moses, as he writes Genesis, there wasn't really a word for the universe as we might define that word today. So instead, he uses the word eretz. Strong's number, Hebrew 776, and it actually has a lot of definitions. It can be used a lot of different ways. So then I went to another source that I have, Umberto Cassuto's book on Genesis Part 1. And even he agrees that because Moses had no other word to use, he uses the word earth as a way to describe the dimension, for lack of a better word, that we live in. What we would know as the universe today. If it sounds technical, don't worry. I'm going to attempt to make this as easy to understand as possible, and hopefully you will even be able to explain it. Now, that's asking a lot from me, isn't it? But that's okay. In the original language, the words for earth and world are not interchangeable. They are distinctly different. The earth is what we live on. It can be ground, it can be dust, it can be mud, it can even be a floor. It's something that we can use our senses to understand. We can see it, we can feel it, sometimes we can smell it. It can be difficult to hear it, and I really don't suggest tasting it. Okay? Just saying. Don't, if you have to, you have to, but probably not a good idea. The world, on the other hand, the word world, well, you know what? Let's look at some passages that have the word world in them. Go ahead and read those.
He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them among princes and bestows on them a throne of honor. For the foundation of the earth are the Lord's, and upon them he has set the world. 1 Samuel 2, verse 8. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the foes. He hurled lightning and rooted them. The channels of the sea appeared, and the foundations of the world were exposed at the rebuke of the Lord, at the blast of the breath of his nostrils. 2 Samuel 22, verse 14 through 16. Ascribe to the Lord, O families of the nations. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Bring an offering and come before him. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. Tremble before him, all the earth. The world is firmly established. It cannot be moved. 1 Chronicles 16, verse 28 through 30. He is torn from the shelter of his tent and is marched off to the king's terrors. Fire resides in his tent. Burning sulfur rains down on his dwelling. The roots beneath him dry up. The branches above him wither away. The memory of him perishes from the earth, and he has no name in the land. He is driven from light into darkness and is chased from the inhabited world. Job 18, verses 14 through 18.
Okay. Now, all of these verses contain the word world, right? But did you notice anything else? What does the word world refer to in each of these passages? And it's kind of hard to see it, but you have to know how biblical Hebrew was written, kind of. It sort of comes out in English. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them among the princes and bestows on them the throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's, and upon them he sets his world. He raises the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy. He seats them among the princes, among the honorable, supposedly, people. Why does he do that? Because the foundation of the earth are Jehovah's. The foundation of the earth belongs to him. Who's he talking about? Upon the foundation he sets the world. Well, let's keep going a little bit. He shot his arrows at and scattered the foes. He hurled lightning and routed them. The channels of the sea appeared. The foundations of the world were exposed, and the rebuke of Jehovah ascribed to Jehovah families of nations. He's torn from the shelter of his tent and marched off in terror. You see, each of these passages, the word world doesn't refer to the earth. It refers to people. The foundation of the earth that belongs to our Creator is people. Isn't that amazing, the way they differentiate and the way it's used is nothing less than intelligent. I mean, we think of it today, and it's hiding in plain sight in these passages, even in English. So what are the foundations of the earth? And how are they different from the foundations of the world? Now, if someone's chased out of the inhabited world, what are they actually chased out of? You see, these are the kinds of questions you have to be able to figure out to ask to get to the answers of what they're saying. And the answer to these questions really wasn't that hard once you kind of grasp a couple of old concepts, old, outdated concepts. It has to refer to people. And I'm speaking in generalities here. The foundations have to refer to people. And I think we can figure out which people they are if they belong to the Creator. Pretty simple when you think about it, right? And it's no different than the pillars of the earth. Now, different than the foundation. Pillars, on the other hand, typically hold something up, right? Well, if we think of a pillar of the community, the town doesn't sit on pillars. It's the people that hold up the community. It's actually referring to the wealthy, influential people. And the passages we read are not about the ground we walk on, or they are about the people. Some good people, some bad people. It's that simple. And that led me to another question. Why did Samuel feel the need to use a different word for people? Sounds like a legitimate question to me. I'm not sure what you're thinking right now. Up until the time of Samuel, the Bible concentrated mainly on the few chosen people that belonged to the Creator. And the language reflects that. But as they moved out to cover the earth, they needed a word that would differentiate people in general from everybody else. Even what we think of today, the word Gentile, it comes from goyim. It's actually found in Exodus 19:6 to describe the mixed multitude. So we can see some evolution of language even from that particular word. The word people used up until that point is Strong's 5971. It's and it's typically specific to a group of people, not everybody. When Samuel needed a word to speak about the entirety of the people on earth, he used the word Tabal. The word world refers to everyone who has ever lived on earth. Now, Christians, you should be thinking about John 3:16 here. Okay? For God so loved the world. And I know that there's Greek people out there going, but it's cosmos. It's cosmos. Yes, that's the word that the Greeks used. And the concept of God loving the entire universe is not an original Hebrew concept. That comes later, about the 1st century AD. Okay? After all, think about this. The Creator told Isaiah that he was going to destroy the heavens and the earth. Right? I will make a new heaven and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered. But what stands firm? The people. People are different because we are created to be eternal. The earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, everything around you gets destroyed. People are eternal. And what I really want you to understand here is when the Creator speaks you into existence, He wants it to be forever. He doesn't want you to fall into the ways of the unjust. He has a desire for you to follow His instructions and stay on His highway, as we talked about in the last episode. The world, well, the people in its general entirety, they're compared to some rather strange things. Isaiah 17 describes the world as a wilderness. Well, if you look around today, people are kind of wild, aren't they? By the way, some translations use the word desert there, and that's incorrect. Just saying. You see, there's nothing new under the sun. All we have to do is be able to read what is written the way it is written. And a couple of the passages that I picked out are actually used by a group of people to force them to mean something they don't mean. And when you put words into the mouth of the Creator, there's also a word for that. It's called blasphemy. Just saying. In Psalm 98:9, it reminds us he comes to judge the earth. I think he's already done that. Remember when he cursed the earth in Genesis 3? But David continues. He will judge the world with righteousness and the people with equity. Three separate things. He judges the physical ground we walk on. It now grows thorns and brambles and branches and other things that'll try to stick you, sting you, or hurt you. But he judges the entirety of mankind with righteousness. And the people, definite article, the people, who did David mean? Well, who's he talking about most of the time? The people that belong to the Creator, the people who choose him. He judges them with equity. So, how will you be judged? With righteousness? That's not a bad thing, right? You get what you deserve. But he judges his people with evenness, uprightness. Kind of a different level. He sort of grades on the curve, as we say in the United States. Which group will you be in? The one where you're just general population? Or the one where you're his? I usually don't do this, but here's some homework for you. Go look for passages with the word, not just verses. Read the passage and read it from the original viewpoint. The world is not this thing we live on. It's who you're part of. The world is people. The earth is what we live on. Big difference. Understanding these, as some people like to call them, ancient Hebrew wisdoms, helps when we're trying to figure out exactly what we're talking about. Right? I was asked, how's the easiest way to know when someone is speaking if they have an original thought and how they developed it? And I try to do this as often as I can. If you give sources and resources that you've looked at, just like I did, I went through that whole list of resources, Nate, and I do that a lot. Because I want you to know where I looked and where I found this information so that you have the ability to be able to do the same thing. You might be able to come up with something completely amazing on your own. But you have to put in the time to do it. Watching cute kitten videos on YouTube is not going to get it. You actually have to read. You actually have to go to the source and read how it's changed over the years. like the word world, being the people, well, all of mankind who's ever lived on earth, is not the entire universe. It's not just the thing we live on. It's not, anything always completely physical. It's people who are designed to live forever. So where will you be judged? As one of his? Hopefully. Because if you're simply part of the crowd and you're judged in his righteousness, you might not like where you wind up. Just saying. Hopefully, you can now explain when somebody says, oh, the world is. You can say, no, not according to Scripture. Not according to Scripture. The world is people. The earth is the earth. Two completely different concepts in the Bible. Did I make that easy enough? Okay. That's good. So, until Monday.
Until Monday.
I have no idea what I'm going to come up with for Monday. Because I'm still looking at some of these words. So you never know. Until Monday, we wish you many, many blessings, everyone.
Let's be blessed all.